Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hi everybody, this is Neil Allen, the creator of Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, the cosmic fantasy graphic novel that you can purchase on Amazon in the link in the description. You can get it in ebook format, which is only $2.99, or free if you have Kindle Unlimited. Or you can pick up the paperback if you like actually having, physical media, which I do. So today we're actually going to talk a bit about Zatswan while I work on this art. And I've been getting, reviews from people, thankfully. And it seems that a consensus is kind of coming in with readers, and I wanted to talk about that. It seems that this comic book of mine is a lot weirder than even I thought. I didn't set out to make it as weird as apparently it is. I like to kind of blend in some of the mailbag features with these kind of art rambles of mine. So I'm going to read some feedback I've gotten. Let me get right into that actually. Let's let that dry. So this review says, the psychedelic cover and strange title piqued my curiosity for this graphic novel, which didn't disappoint. This turned out to be like an underground comic that you might discover in the 90s from friends who knew the cult stuff flying under the radar, such as Cerebus or American Splendor. Most of the charm here is that you feel it is a labor of love, and the psychedelic drawings done in vivid primary colors won me over. The world building is just as wild as the art, even though some of its intricacies remain a mystery to me. There is a parallel with the superhero zeitgeist of modern times, but with no overtly commercial drive. It is sort of a fever dream at the same time. Basically, I found all this personal vision to be very enjoyable and entertaining. And that was a 5-star review. It was an Amazon review. I really appreciate the reviewer for writing that in and saying all that stuff, and I'm glad that they really enjoyed the comic. So it seems, I want to read another one too, just to kind of give you an example of some of the consensus that seems to be from my observation setting in with this comic. Okay, here's another interestingly 5-star review. That's really good. And the title of the review is Weird and Captivating, and the review goes on to say, a wild and original comic novel, if I do say so. The illustrations were rough, colorful, and inventive, and were clearly a passion project, almost over the top with creativity. I had a blast reading this story and enjoyed the abstract originality of this passion project. It's fun if you're into the strange and unique. Okay, so thanks again for that review too. So it seems to me what is setting in, and I would like to comment on both of these things, is that apparently my work is weird, like very strange, but not necessarily in a bad way. And I would like to comment on that, but I also want to comment on this idea that my work is some kind of passion project or labor of love or something like that. So both of those things, are interesting topics of discussion that I would like to get into. First of all, the comic is apparently weirder than like I said, anticipated. I won't say intended to be, I'll say anticipated. I did not set out necessarily to create some super duper weird comic. I think some people do, like your Grant Morrisons, maybe your Alan Moores. And I think some people even and I think they have a knack for it. you know. And I think there are people who try to do that who try a little harder, like a Scott Snyder, when you consider like his Justice League run with that doorknob stuff. Kind of seemed like he was trying to sort of be like a Grant Morrison. So the interesting thing about me is I didn't set out to be any of that. And it seems like I'm the weirdest of the bunch, you know, of all of those examples at least. And it's kind of interesting because it just turned out that way. And my art is weird and my storytelling is weird, and that's interesting. And I'm not even going to argue with it because I've heard too many examples, you know, saying that it's weird. Like, of what I'm working on right now, to me, to my eye, this isn't weird art. It's just kind of normal. What I would say usually is that there are just people who aren't used to seeing traditional art in superhero comics, so they might think that's strange. But actually, and I still kind of see things that way. It's like there's nothing I'm doing here that's like way off. Like my style isn't way far out. I don't see it that way. Like my eye actually does not see that, but at the same time it's like I'm not going to argue with people. Like I've heard too many by now I've heard too many accounts that whatever I'm doing, it's like far out. So it's so interesting to me because to me it's not even far out. It's just, you know, I don't know. I just don't really see it that way. But I'm more far out than Grant Morrison and uh, Alan Moore and all these other people by the sound of it without even trying to do that. And the interesting thing about those people is they're like, the way I see it too is I'm not even that odd of a person. They're out there trying to legit be like wizards and stuff. Literally, like Grant Morrison and Alan Moore, they're like trying to practice black magic or something like that. I don't do anything like that. So to me, it's kind of like, in some ways, I'm not saying necessarily in bad ways, but I'm not even as idiosyncratic an individual. But I don't know, maybe I am, but I must be the real deal then, because I don't even have to try to do this stuff. This is just what I do, you know. You know. So I think that's really interesting. Like I don't see it as that far out, but I will not argue with all this feedback I'm getting. It must be a pretty far out comic book. I encourage you, if you have not, to go check out Zatswan and see for yourself, actually. Why don't you let me know what you think of it? Is it really this bizarre? And again, not even bizarre in a bad way. I really appreciate everybody commenting on that and letting me know. It's really good to, you know, hear what other people think about the book. And then there's this idea of it being a passion project. Like people seem to be all up in that. Like he's clearly doing this. I mean, I don't know how to feel about that because I guess it depends on what exactly you mean by passion project, like, or labor of love. Are you saying that I'm doing this with no real intent of monetary gain? Because that would be entirely incorrect. I made Zatswan to make billions of dollars. The thing about it is just I'm very patient about that. I'm not expecting to do that right away. So, you know, getting a bit of a harder edge in here. But no, I mean, I don't see it that way. Like maybe you can kind of see it that way. I just know I'm not going to turn a profit immediately doing it. So, or not, I have turned a profit, but I mean, I'm not going to turn like massive profit doing it, you know? Or I guess you can say, like, have you really turned a profit when you consider how long you work on it? Yes, I've made money through Zatswan. I mean, I'm happy to get what I get, but I plan on making more. And I made Zatswan with the intent to make money, not just to do it, so as far, I guess people kind of assume that it's this passion project because of the way it looks or something. Well, let me give my insight on that. I think that I am savvy enough to know that I likely wouldn't make billions of dollars doing Zatswan if it looked like every Marvel comic or DC comic out there. That's not, I don't think so. Because it wouldn't stand out, it wouldn't have much to offer. I made another video, or much of its own unique identity. And that's what most of the comics over there are. Yes, there are industry standards and house styles and certain looks that comics have, and I guess Zatswan doesn't follow trend or isn't on point with that. In some ways. And I guess the way that I see it is that I talked about this before in another video. When you think about the biggest comics there are, like Dogman and One Piece, that are going on right now, they aren't on trend with that stuff either. I bet people who first started looking at that, I know because I remember my reaction when I saw One Piece. I'm like, what, look at this thing. It's weird looking, that's how but it stood out and I didn't forget it, and and there wasn't anything else that looked like it. And it made a huge impression. I will give it that. And the same thing with Dogman. I bet you the people, certain people who first started, who first looked at that were like, what, look at this thing. I don't know about this thing, but I bet it stood out, made a huge impression, and they did not forget about it. So I'm savvy enough to know that if I'm going to play in that league, I have to be like that too. Now, fortunately, I can't come in here so I think I'm actually the one that's really thinking about making big money. Yeah, you can be like a Dan Mora or something, or draw like that, and people will like your work and you'll find success, but it's nice too. It's nice and it's distinctive, I will say that. But to me, as nice and distinctive as it may be, there's something there that's missing. It's nice, it's clean, the characters look good, distinctive. But the way I see it, there's something that artist doesn't have. That artist doesn't have that a Zatswan, that a Neil Allen, I guess you can say, does have. And that's not me saying that, and it's not just a Neil Allen, it's an Oda, it's a Dav Pilkey. There's something that those people have that, say, a Dan Mora does not have, as nice as a Dan Mora is at art. You know what I mean? Dan Mora is, I don't know. I think he is and will be very successful at the stuff he does. But and I'm just using him as an example. A lot of DC and Marvel guys are like that. They just don't have something. They don't have okay, I will give you some guys that do have the biggest artists, the biggest names of, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Now, I hesitate to say like even Greg Capullo, because Capullo is kind of like, in some ways, like a lesser McFarlane, as I see it. Like Todd is the one who really had something. Capullo, he's really good. Like I wouldn't take anything from him. He's a really great artist. But it's like, and even Rob Liefeld. I think Rob Liefeld does have that thing, but he's missing other things. Like basically the certain craft things. But when it comes to that magic, okay, so the thing about that craft that Rob might not have as much of, here's the thing about that. You can learn that. This magic element that these people do not have, I think that is harder to actually learn. That's kind of you might be able to learn it, but it's sort of, the way I see it is kind of, you either have that or you don't, And there are a lot of artists that are really good and good at their craft, and great draftsmen. Like for instance, I mentioned in a recent in a recent video, I mentioned I was reading some Iron Man by Lynn Kaminsky and Kevin Hopgood. So the artist in that, Kevin Hopgood, really good, really sound artist. However, he does not have that special element. Like he's just a really good sound artist that knows his craft well. But there's something there that he doesn't have, and that's that magic. I guess what people would call it kind of is it factor. It's a very hard thing to quantify, and it's a very hard thing to identify, but I do think it is a thing. And I guess one thing I realize is that, okay, so the thing about me, and I'm not just here just to like put myself over, because there was a guy who said all kinds of bad things about me one time earlier, in my earlier days as an artist, and I don't hold it against him. He was just giving his opinion. And he was telling me stuff like I don't draw good enough, and at the time I probably didn't, He's like, but he says, you know what, I'll give you this, you stand out. So even back then, when I wasn't nearly as good, and my work wasn't any good, he saw, even this guy who was like really, I hesitate to say rude. And by the way, if you want to know, this was on digital webbing. Like, I think that it was like a comic book forum, like for comic artists. I think it's gone now. I think the forum is. He saw that there is as much as I'm kind of pooping all over your work. So he wasn't just saying this to make me feel good, because he was saying a lot of bad stuff about my work, which again, I don't necessarily hold against him. He was like, at the same time, you stand out. There's nothing else like this. And there's something here. And so, I don't necessarily know that he was wrong. What it was is I think I had the element that I have was there, but I needed to just work on my craft more, to sell it, to get that element across as well as I could. So, okay, so does Zatswan have this quote unquote what you would think of as a commercial art look for comics? Probably it must not. I was going to say probably not, but I just don't think that it does. I'm hearing too much stuff that it doesn't. Like, so from my point of view, it's not that far out, but apparently it is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, this is clearly a passion project and it's not a commercial thing. No, I realize that if I am going to reach, that level of, superstar artist or comic creator, I can't be like that. I can't be like a Dan Mora. I can't be like a, you know, whatever generic DC Marvel comic creator, Those guys definitely have good craft and skill down, but that it factor that makes them stand out from everything else and makes them unmistakable, I don't think they have that. And what can they do? I don't know. That's a hard. Now, again, craft, draftsman abilities, you can learn that stuff. That kind of elusive, super special element that, makes an artist even a superstar, like a Pablo Picasso. He had it. That is harder to learn. I think that's kind of, I don't want to say this absolutely, but I think you either have that or you don't, or at least in many cases you do. Now, does Zatswan have that? For some people, I think it does, but for other people, obviously not. But a lot of times when you're that type of artist, um, you're taking more risks, because there are people who won't get what you're doing, or they won't, even if they do understand you and what you're doing and where you're coming from, they'll have no appreciation for it. And I think a lot of artists, especially those that kind of march to the beat of their own drum, kind of go through, they kind of just that's just the thing you deal with, you know what I mean? Like, there are people I know who don't like what I do. As a matter of fact, I think I'll read some feedback. Let me pull it up right quick while I let some of this dry. There is one particular comment that I want to share, and let me find it. Okay, so interestingly, this wasn't a review. This was just like a comment somebody left on my channel. But I've been meaning to share it. I like to share things that are like, I like to share positive comments and reviews, as well as even ones that aren't positive, just to add some, drama in there. So this commenter says, it's awesome that you're creating your own comic book series, but you really need to redo the entire series with better art. The art style is very I think they meant dated. The art style is very dated and fanfic looking. Wishing you the best of luck. I look forward to reading it once you've updated the artwork. P.S. Zatswan's costume reminds me of Captain Planet, and the girl kinda looks like Magic from Marvel Rivals, the snow outfit. Magic, he's referring to, or they're referring to the X-Men character. And yeah, I do see that. I didn't, like, Magic wasn't an, okay, we'll leave this color here. And it's going to be really dark in here. I think we're going to finish up this figure today. I know I've been working on it in more than one video, actually. I think it's going to get done today. Yeah, I didn't, I see the connection between Alakazona and Magic, but Magic was not an inspiration at all, like at all. That's just coincidental. But as you can see here, this commenter, that was kind of a funny thing to say. It's like, it's kind of an interesting comment, because what this person's saying is that it's awesome that you're creating your own comic book series, but you really need to redo the entire series with better art. The art style is very dated and fanfic looking. What I assume is that whatever that this commenter doesn't like about the art is the same thing that's bringing other people to the art. So I think it just goes to show that some people, and this goes for artists in general, I think, but I think probably the more quote unquote far out you get, and apparently I'm pretty far, the more far out you get, the more you're going to get reactions like that, because you're just getting further and further away from what people are used to seeing. At least when it relates to the context of what you're doing. Like I'm doing a superhero comic. Apparently people are just not used to seeing superhero comics that look like this. And my art is very fanfic looking, which of course Zatswan is not a fanfic. It's like it's a wholly original idea. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry. We're going to let this dry. I think I'm going to put some of this here, but it just goes to show that some people will get you, other people will not, and just because some people don't get you does not mean your work is necessarily bad. It just means they're looking for something different. Like, and that's kind of a ridiculous request. Like, like, it's cool you're doing a comic, but I hate everything about it, and you need to change everything about it. I guess that's interesting feedback to get. I guess my mind's kind of thinking that, well, if I dislike the thing that much, I would just keep it pushing. But I don't mind that this, I don't mind that this commenter like left some feedback. I appreciate that. But at that point, it's like, oh, I don't know what I can do. Like, sometimes you just can't do something for some people. Like, you will get a lot of requests, I guess, or you may. We can darken this up a bit in here. But for some people, there's just nothing you can do. Like, no, I'm not going to redo all the art for Zatswan. That's kind of an absurd request. If you, like, dislike it that much, then just, I think the best thing to do is just keep it pushing. Like, it's not for you, you know? But I appreciate the feedback regardless. Like I said, I like to share negative feedback here too. Maybe people who dislike my work will feel more seen. Like, hey, I thought that too. He sucks. Okay, so let's get some dark stuff, some more shadow in here, and then blend this out. Not too far though. So yeah, we're using watercolor here. Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant Watercolor Concentrate. And I remember in a recent video I said something like watercolor is quicker than colored pencil. You know, I've actually really been thinking about that. Like, is it really? Like, on the surface it seems like it is, but in reality, actually, let's go in here and get this area as well. In reality, I don't know that it is, because you can fill up like large spaces with color quicker, but when you factor in things like waiting for the paint to dry and just the forethought it's going to take to do what you want to do, to manipulate the water and the paint the way you would like, whereas with colored pencil you can just continuously keep kind of working and working and working. I kind of wonder, is it really faster than colored pencil? Because like watercolor stuff can take me a while as well. I kind of bring that up because I've been working on this figure, I know, for like, I think this will be the third video. But then again, I don't know. I think, like, in many cases, art, like, if you want your art to be good, it's just going to take time. And I don't mind that, though. Let's get this in here and get this area in here. So these are just like art hangouts for those who are interested. Maybe it will inspire other people to work on their art or pick up doing art, and that would be cool. I used to watch art, well, I still do watch art videos. Let's let this dry some. I still do watch art videos from people, but when I started YouTube, or when I started watching a lot of art videos on YouTube, a lot of those people aren't doing it anymore. Like I would watch videos by, interestingly, for whatever reasons. I don't know why. I don't really think there's anything to it other than, their work really appealed to me. I would watch video like girl artists a lot, like Limia Crescent, which she hasn't put out a video in a long time. Bittersweet Nightmare is another one that I would watch a lot, which I think she's not doing it anymore. And there were some others. I think the biggest one in that sort of circle, she is still doing things, Bailey J. Yeah, I would watch videos like art videos from them, which, yeah, it was interesting. They all did traditional art too, which as you can see, I'm into. They weren't working digitally too much. Maybe that's what kind of drew me in. Traditional art, just to me, it's a lot more fun for me, a lot more fulfilling and enjoyable. There's just nothing quite like it. The dude artists, I didn't find too many that were like working like that, like working traditionally. And I mean, they are out there. I guess I don't know. They were just different, I suppose. So let's we're just letting this dry. But yeah, they were a lot of fun to watch. So it's kind of interesting now I'm the one. And they would inspire me to, work and like do artwork, and they would come up with all kinds of different supplies that, they would showcase that inspired me to go out and want to check out those supplies. So I don't know, maybe this can be something similar for somebody. I hope so. And it could kind of inspire them to get back into doing their artwork, or something to put on while they're doing their artwork, or maybe to pick up and try artwork. Okay, so I think we've given this sufficient drying time. So what we're going to do, we're going to go in with a darker color. Okay, I'm going to wet in here. We want to keep these areas around these like energy beams kind of light. So I'm not going to go all the way up near the energy beams. I'm going to get kind of near them and go all in here. Okay, here we go. And then just put this color in, take it up near the beams. But yeah, speaking of that passion project thing, I don't know. I never thought of it that way myself. I never did. Like, whether it is a passion project or a labor of love, not the way I ever considered it. I always did Zatswan to, I didn't, yeah, there is that aspect that I did it just because I had this burning desire. I had this story inside me and I needed to get that out. Yes, that is true. But at the same time, I was always like, I want to be a superstar comic guy. Do I have delusions of grandeur? Maybe, but I mean, I won't stop regardless. And that's one thing about me too. I don't stop. I don't, I haven't stopped yet. One thing, like I said, I do realize is that, it takes time. I really taught myself to do comics doing Zatswan. Honestly, it's not like I had this massive catalog of, like, work, like this giant, like all this other stuff I'd worked on before doing Zatswan. I did not. So I actually learned, and I've come a really, really long way, but I've actually learned to do comics doing Zatswan. So realistically, like in reality, um, about how long like it would take to like get popular, I realize like I'm consciously aware that I came into this whole thing cold. Like I stumbled my way through, you know, just learning, you know, how to do comics. So you have to take that into consideration. You know, it's not like I was some super duper comic master uh, when I started, you know, working on this comic book. I came in from nowhere, had to learn as I went, had to redraw a bunch of pages, you know, because my skills had way surpassed what they were. Um, and things like that. So, where am I at now? Am I a super duper comic master now? Well, what I will say is that a lot of like the thinking is to become a master at something, you need to put in 10,000 hours doing it. Have I done that with comic books? I'm pretty darn sure. I am pretty sure I've put in I'm actually positive of that. How like it's been over 10,000 hours. So, I mean, I will say I've come a long way, but as you can see from that comment that I read, the most recent one I read, you know, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to like what I do. I realize that. And that's okay. As we've seen from the other comments that I've read, a lot of people do, and that's just the way it goes when you're an artist, especially when you're one that, like I said, is kind of apparently very far out. You know, like your work won't appeal to everyone. For example, speaking of Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, isn't it? I've never cared for his work. I just don't. It doesn't. It just does not work with me. His All Star Superman, and I'm not a huge fan of that story. A lot of people are, but I never got into it too much. His Superman looks kind of dumpy, and definitely not near my favorite Superman. But people love, love, love that story, and they love that artist, and you know. Who am I to argue with that? Like, does it speak to me? No. But apparently, you know, the guy's getting the job done. So, yeah, your art's not going to, like, speak to everybody. Okay, let's go in with an even darker color now. That's sufficiently dry. So you're seeing, like, yeah, there are, like, drying times and stuff when it comes to watercolor. Now I could go into work while it's drying. I could go into work on different parts of the picture, which would be a smart thing to do. But at the same time, I want to keep my mind, this is like a mental thing. I want to keep my mind centered on just what I'm doing here. So my goal is so I can get this really good natural blend. See, the thing with watercolor is if you're not careful, and sometimes some people want this, or there are times when you may want this, you can get like these one color goes straight into another color, like these hard edges. You can see it somewhat up in here, instead of a smooth gradated blend, and I want that smooth blend here. So if you're not careful, though, it'll be like one color next to another color next to another color. With watercolor, you can get very hard edges, and I don't want that. I kind of like all those gradients going on. So first I'm just going to start with this side here, actually, just so I don't overwhelm myself. And I'm gonna, it's not dark enough. It's a little better. but we're gonna have to go in there with more layers, I think. We'll see. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna let that sit and to see what the water decides to do, and kind of if it starts doing something I don't like, we can kind of coax it along. I talked about in previous videos how like some people really don't like watercolor, and I will admit it presents some unique challenges that other mediums don't. The thing is, like, it does what it does. It has a mind of its own, and you kind of have to know how to work with it and manipulate it to do what you want it to do. And sometimes you just let it do what it's gonna do. It's looking pretty good. Why don't we go over to this side here? I'm kind of liking this blend, though. We might want to leave it. Let's darken it up a little bit, actually. How about we go in here and get some darker colors. And just dab them in there and let the water kind of spread and blend. And again, let's keep our eye on what's going on over here. So that's the thing, you got to keep your eye on, like, what the water's doing. And if you're so concerned about going over here to do something or going over there, you stop kind of looking. That's what I found, and you can get kind of like hard edges. It's looking like pretty decent blend, though. Kind of hard over here. This is nice down in here. This looks like it's turning out pretty good. So yeah, I guess the thing that's making this project a little interesting is all these energy beams. We want to get, like, if you want a good glow, then you need those smooth blends. That's the secret to getting like good glows from in traditional art. You need smooth blends. So that's what we're trying to do here. But I do think I am going to finish up this figure. I do know these videos are long, so I don't know if I'm going to finish up the figure completely on camera, just so I don't make the video overly long. Let's add a little more water in here. With a smaller brush. So when you're doing watercolor, you want, okay, about this. Do you think we should blend this out smoother? Maybe we should. See what we can do. Let's see what we can do. Light touch, don't overwork things. I think we smooth things. Then you gotta like let the water do what it's gonna do. So even if it doesn't do what you want it to do immediately, just let the water kind of do its thing. And actually, I think I'm gonna go into and make this hand a lot darker, like in here, since that's such a bright light. Keep the edges kind of lit up a bit more, but these inner parts here I might just make very, very dark on the hand. But that does look pretty good. Actually, I probably will let this dry here and then go in with like a fuller, stronger dark, like something close to a black, to get this area in here. All right, everybody. So I think we might leave this video off on this point, and I will continue working on this. And I'm sure there'll be another video I'll probably show you all like where it's at that point. But for now, be sure to like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts on the things we discussed, like the weirdness of Zatswan and so on. I'll talk to all of you again very soon, and until then, take care.